care of. My dad, I told you this before, he came up out in the South, and him and his dad and family, they were sharecroppers. You know anything about a sharecropper? One of the things that they do, they either lease the land from another owner, or they take care of the land for the owner, and they enter some type of agreement that whatever grows, you know, so-and-so, the owner gets a percentage either off of the lease or either off the harvest, whatever is sold. And then the ones who's tilling the ground and seeing after it, they get a percentage so they can maintain their life. So there's a couple of things going on. One, the ground is being taken care of because every year the person who is a sharecropper takes care of the ground. Therefore, the owner doesn't have to worry about the ground being taken care of himself. He has somebody. Then when they grow the ground and whatever is sold, the owner is making money. And then the people who's doing the work, they're being taken care of. So everybody happy. God plants the vineyard, builds the tower, turns around and makes a wine press. And he was expecting for the vineyard to bring forth grapes. I want everybody to underline that in your mind. Bring forth. Bring forth. The purpose was to bring forth. Now, I'll come back to that. God said I was expecting it to bring forth, and I turned around when it was time for it to bring forth, and when I looked around, it brought forth. But it didn't bring forth the right stuff. Bring forth. But it didn't bring forth the right stuff. It brought forth wild grapes. Now to bring forth wild grapes, there's a wine press. The wine press is of no use. Because the wild grapes cannot produce or satisfy the reason why the wine press is used. Wild grapes. So, just keep this in mind. What are you bringing forth? And if you're bringing forth something, is it the right stuff? Can it be used? Or is it good for nothing? Sour grapes is good for nothing. The deer don't even like sour grapes. Yeah, the deer likes the sweet grapes. That's why we don't protect the vineyard. What does that deer do? Okay, come September, October, he come eat all of them nice sweet grapes. You ever notice sour grapes left right there? And you can at least halfway deal with the deer if you would just eat the sour grapes and leave the good ones alone. That bird doesn't come and eat the sour cherry.
All right.
That bird gets the red, the dark, juicy. And can I tell you something? If you grow a cherry tree, you never get the best of the cherries. The bird does. Because the best of the cherries is going to be way up top. You can't fly up there. And then you go ahead and fool around and try to climb up in there and see what happens. You never get it. God takes care of that bird. He gets the best. Don't be mad at me. All right, I got to move on here. God says you brought forth sour grapes. He says in verse number 4, he said, what more could I have done? What more could I have done? Now this is Isaiah's song. Oh man, y'all walking out on the good part. We're gonna get to the good part. And we all don't look back, y'all look ahead. Looking back like, who are you talking about? They got to take care of some things. They still leaving out on the good part. God said, what else could I have done? What else? I planted in fertile ground. I planted the best. I protected you. I kept you. I preserved you. I watched over you. I allowed the rain to come. When rain was needed, I allowed the sun to shine. When the sun was needed, and then you fool around and bring forth sour grapes.
Jesus.
I said, what else could I? The reason God is asking this question is not because he is questioning what he did, nor is he questioning as though there was something that he didn't do. God's question is a thought-provoking question. What else could I have done? What God is saying is that it's not on me. Everything was set up for you to bring forth. And you did bring forth, but you brought forth sour grapes. God said, I expected, I was looking for good grapes. That was the purpose that I planted you. But you wild. You're sour. Not good for anything. Now God says after I've done everything that I did to make it possible for you to bring forth, and you did it, now I got to do something about this. It says in verse number 5, he says, and now please, let me tell you what I will do. Now remember first, we can see it was Isaiah singing the song. But now God takes over in the song. No longer is Isaiah talking, he, in and of himself. He's now inspired by God. So the mouth or the voice of the prophet becomes in essence the voice of God.
All right.
So now God is singing. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor.
Neighbor.
When God starts singing, what is he saying to you? God is singing now. God says, let me tell you what I will do.
All right.
God, you're going to do something? I thought you said you already did everything, Lord. You laid the foundation. You opened up the way. You made salvation possible. Your grace has appeared unto all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, godly, and righteously in this present world, looking for the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our great God and our Savior, Jesus Christ. So God, is there something else you're going to do? And what I'm getting ready to do, man, a pretty picture. God says, remember my vineyard? I built a hedge around my vineyard to keep all of the wild goats and the lions and the wolves out. God said, I protected my vineyard. I preserved my vineyard. Just like the shepherd does the sheep. Psalms 23, God says, I did all of that for my vineyard. God says, I'm going to take the hedge away. Why? Because you brought forth sour grapes. Not only am I going to take the hedge away, but you are concerned about the wild animals. God said, I got a better one for you. Fire is going to come and burn this vineyard. Now, you thought the hedge was just to keep you from the lion and the wolf. God says, my hedge was protecting you from more than just the lion and the wolf. My hedge was protecting you from being burned up. Some folks think that God was just protected them from the accident. Thank God he protected you from the accident. But he protected you from AIDS too. Oh gosh, I wish I had somebody in here today that knew what I was talking about. He didn't only protect you from he protected you from dying before time. Don't you know any of us could have died without Christ? Could have died on our way to a devil's hell? But it was that hedge. See, the old saints used to know something about that hedge. I don't know how much this generation know about the hedge, the protection. That's the old saints used to talk about that. I thank God for building a hedge about me. You remember we used to sing that song, Jesus be a fence around me. Every day I know you can, I know you will fight my battles. Lord, we knew something about the hedge of God. Let me remind you that none of us are here today and some of them been shot, but they're still here to tell the story of God's goodness. They're still here. One of my coats that I wear, I have right now a bullet in that coat right now. And it's been there for some years now. Every time I put that coat on and go in the pocket and that bullet is there, many times I was going to throw it away. But after all these years, I still haven't thrown that bullet away. Because every time I reach in that pocket, that reminds me of God's keeping power. Every time I put my hand on that bullet, it causes a praise to bubble up over on the inside. It serves as a remembrance of God's goodness. So I ain't mad with some folk that want to, drill a hole in with a bullet over their neck. Wear that bullet. Every time you look at it, pray, give God a praise. You ought to just interrupt some things. Ought to walk in the bank and just say, hey, glory! Folk look around, just hold up the bullet. I don't know if you want to try that in the bank. You get my point. You know what I'm trying to tell you. That God's been good to you. But God said to my vineyard, I've done everything for you, but now I'm going to remove my head because you didn't do your part. Not only am I going to remove the head, but I'm going to break down the wall, and you are going to be trampled down. I am going to allow you to be laid waste. And you know why this is happening? Because Israel turned her back on God. Now, when you get a chance, just write down in your notes, go back and read Deuteronomy chapter number 28, in particular verses 15 down through the end of that chapter. And Deuteronomy 28, that's where God tells Moses to remind Israel that, listen, Israel, if you want to be blessed, then here is what you must do. He says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse number 1, he said, if you hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord your God to do everything that he had commanded you and to follow in his ways, then God begins to name a number of blessings that Israel was going to be blessed with. So he said, listen, if you hearken and you obey, he said, you're going to be blessed coming in, you're going to be blessed going out. He said, your barns are going to be blessed and full. He said, your cattle and sheep and oxen is going to be blessed. He said, the fruit of your womb is going to be blessed. And God said, There's something different about you. What is it? It's the hand of God, the hands of God, the blessings of God that is on the life of the believer. But then God says, when you get down to verse number 15, God says, now if you refuse to hearken to my voice, if you refuse to do what I asked you to do, he says in Deuteronomy 28, verse 18, he said, curse shall be the fruit of your body, and the produce, did you catch that? And the produce of your land. Now. How does all of this tie in? The produce of your land, Deuteronomy 28 and 28 and 18, is going to be messed up. Notice what we read in Isaiah. God said, I planted you on a fertile ground. So if it's fertile, it's supposed to bring forth. But Israel hindered the blessings of God in their life. God said, I'm going to bless you. But he said, if you refuse to obey, then curse. So even though the land was fertile when God planted it, Israel was not productive in what God called her to do. So when Israel was not productive in what God called her to do, it was a direct result of them not honoring the laws of God. So when they did not honor the law of God, then the law of blessing in that sense was reversed. Now the law of cursing takes its course. And God says when cursing comes, the land is not going to produce. When cursing comes, your cattle is not going to be able to have calves. Your flocks and your sheep is not going to grow. And God says, as a matter of fact, your land is going to be filled with confusion and cursing. Now God is still saying, that was not my intent for you. But that is what you allowed and chose to do. So God said, I'm moving the hedge. Taking my protection away. If you look at the text as we close here, God says, I'm allowing you to be burned. You know what is interesting? What God spoke way back in Deuteronomy, it came to pass exactly like he said. God said there is armies that's going to come from the north, and they are going to discombobulate you. They're going to tear you apart, and they are going to take you. And you're going to be scattered in all nations around the world. Then God says, your land will be left. That fertile ground is going to be left. There will be no rain that's going to come on this land. And if it doesn't rain, the ground gets hard. When the ground gets hard, nothing can go in, nothing can come out. Your land is going to be filled with thorns and briars. And you know what happens when you don't cut your grass, when you don't rake the leaves. Okay, I know y'all waiting for me to get to the 21st century. I'm going to get there in about a minute. Well, I'm there now. You know, your grass is a foot tall. You got mice jumping out the grass on the porch into the house. Now you can fuss all day. This don't make no sense, mice in the house. Go out there and cut the grass. cultivate. Plant some beautiful flowers and never water. Those flowers gonna die. The same picture, God uses this term in the book of Deuteronomy as well. He says, as well in Ezekiel also, he says that the clouds will be like bronze. Now, internal life, the clouds will be like bronze. Clouds right now is a vapor, is water. That's what clouds are. Yeah. But he says when the land is cursed, clouds will be like bronze. No water can, come on, I got to move on, y'all. Did y'all catch it? No water can come out of bronze. He says now when the clouds are like bronze, he said the earth will be like iron. So there's a connection. No water from the clouds, the ground becomes hard. Once the ground becomes hard, the next thing that happens is famine. And we're going to see that later. Not today. And thirst.
Goodness.
Then God says, Isaiah, you singing, I'm singing. Let's make this plain. Who are we talking about? God, who is your vineyard? Verse number 7. Here's a vineyard now that has no hedge, has no wall around it, that'll be burned by fire. Walls will be broken down, the land will be laid waste. Who is this vineyard? Verse 7, the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant plant. He turns around and looked for righteousness, but he found none. Looked for justice, but found none. So God says, got to let my vineyard go. I'm not going to cultivate her this year. I'm not going to even let it rain. It's the Lord's vineyard. He can do whatever he wants to do with his vineyard. The Bible teaches us in St. John 15, if we follow our study. Jesus said, I am the vine. You are the branches. He said, my Father is the husband. Jesus said, if you abide in me, and my word abide in you, you will produce. And you're going to produce not sour grapes, but good grapes. The unfortunate thing is that many of us have been producing sour grapes. Come to church once and a half times a week. Go on the job, say you're Christian. Don't evangelize, fussing, fighting, and cussing. Sour grapes. Get mad and frustrated, can't handle the pressure. Go back in the basement, behind the bar in the left corner. Pull out a fifth or 40. Turn it up. Eyes red, drunk, smelling bad, sour grapes, temper tantrums, unforgiveness, sour grapes. God says, here's what I'll do, you New Testament believers. I'll come and I'll prune you. I'll try to cut that mess out of you. It's going to hurt because when I cut, notice the word cut. What do you think cut means? Cut hurts. God says, I will cut you. I'll cut you to prune you. New Testament believers. So you can bring forth the fruit. You don't let me cut you. Then the only other picture that is left is you will potentially become a dead branch. According to verse 2 and 3 of St. John 15. The dead branch, it dies and it dries up. And the only thing that's good for us to be cut off. Gathered in the fire. To be burned. So to the church today, God said to Israel in Isaiah 5 verse 4, he said, what else? What else could I have done? Let us ask ourselves a question. Church today, what is God saying about us? He said to Israel, shout. What is God saying to the church today? If you would testify about the church today, what is God saying? Okay, let's individualize it. What is God saying to me? He said, I planted you so you could bring forth, but everything so far is silent.